Thank you, David. Thank you, Michael. It's always fun when they get to play that song. It's like, yeah, that's the thing. Who knew Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was a new thought group, right? So thank you for choosing to be part of this spiritual community today. Whether you're here in this room or joining us virtually, we're glad you're here. And happy Father's Day to everyone who is a dad or who acts like a dad. My sister was a single mom and raised her kids by herself pretty much her whole life. So when I talked to her this morning, I said, Happy Father's Day. She laughed. I said, no, I'm serious because you did the dad thing too. And a lot of us, even if we didn't, we're biologically not bad. We do that guiding, supporting, encouraging thing for people, which is kind of what we think the dad thing is, right? And the other thing I want to say is Happy Juneteenth. So today is the 156th anniversary of the day that the enslaved African Americans in Texas learned about the Emancipation Proclamation, that had happened 2 years prior. There's some really cool stories about that time that are available if you want to, see what the world was like then. Some crazy stuff was going on. So today I'm going to continue this June theme about how we use our creativity and our imagination in support of the desires of our hearts. And today's talk, Dreaming, Risking, and Creating, led me in some unexpected directions, which happens, I don't get weird about it. And more on that in a minute. But I'm going to start with a quote that has been attributed to Goethe from his tragic play Faust. But it was actually written by an Irish professor by the name of John Anster, who was inspired by Goethe's Faust. You know the quote. You've heard it before. You've probably even said it out loud. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So how does this quote translate in the world of religious science? Or, more generically, New Thought? We'll start with the quote that Maria read a moment ago from Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind. There is a place in us which lies open to the infinite, but when spirit brings its gift, by pouring itself through us, it can only give us what we can take. So we have this infinity of possibilities that's open, available to every single person. But if we don't think we can have it, it ain't happening. We have to be willing and imaginative enough to know it's possible. I was telling somebody this week that if somebody had told me 15 years ago that I'd be standing here with a microphone in my hand talking to people and cameras, I would have told them they were completely nuts. Because that isn't who I thought I was. And yet, whatever. I made space in my imagination for it to happen. And apparently it's working. So cool. So I'm also going to remind you of some other ideas that probably came out of Ernest Holmes. Actually, they did. But if you had to go point to the chapter and verse where it came from, you might be a little challenged. One, and you know this, it's almost a slogan. Change your thinking, change your life. If we don't imagine it, it's never going to happen. It can't. And then the second one, which is a favorite for many of us, it's done unto you as you believe. So we have to believe. We have to imagine. We have to believe. And then we actually have to, do something. And if we, imagine it and daydream, but we don't, do anything, it's nothing but a daydream. So, Mary Morrissey's prosperity teachings And I forget whether this was in the second year or the third year. But she says, everything is created twice. First in your imagination, and then in your experience. And then some of you will remember Genevieve Barron's little bitty book that tells her magical story of going to study with Thomas Troward in England. The book's called Your Invisible Power. In her imagination, she imagined, and this is 1920? She realized it was going to take a lot of money to go from Boston to London. And she was a widow on a stipend, so she didn't exactly have a lot of money. But she knew she wanted to go to study with Troward, and it was important to her. So what did she do? She imagined $21,000 bills in her hands. And she counted them in her imagination every single night until they became real. And we're all sitting there reading the book, and they're going, but how did she do it? How did she do it? We want to know. And she says, you want to know, but it doesn't matter. That is unimportant. The fact is, if you can imagine it and will allow it to happen, that second part is hard sometimes. Shazam, right? It shows up. And so it's like, but I want to know how you did it. And it's like, I told you. I imagined it. Okay, fine. And so we get to practice in our own minds, in our own mental space, and our ability to conceive and be congruent with that idea. And then make space to allow it to happen. And that's actually the challenging part, right? We can dream it. But then to take it and turn it into form, that means I have to shut down all the noise in my head that says, oh, that can't happen. That's not allowed. That would just be like, who could possibly do that? Which brings us to one of our spiritual practices, right? Affirmations. Everybody does affirmations. Do you believe them? If you don't believe them, you're wasting your oxygen. So Louise Hay, the queen of affirmations, right? On her website, she lists 101 of her favorite affirmations. I'm not going to read all 101, but I will read her top 5. Because I want you to consider whether you could say these things yourself and believe them and take the risk of allowing it to happen. Number 1, life loves me. Do I believe that? Sometimes. Second one, all is well in my world. Everything works out for my highest good. Shit, that doesn't look, that doesn't look like it's supposed to. Out of this situation, only good will come. That's a mouthful. And it's a complicated idea because we're looking at things that don't work like we think they ought to. We think they ought to. It's like, if I can hold that space, that this thing that is sideways or crooked or ugly, and somehow it's for my good. All right, I'll work on it. Next one, I am safe. Safety for some people is a great big huge idea. And if it's true for you that you don't feel safe in your world, if you stand at the mirror and look at your face in the mirror and say, I am safe until you believe it, the world will change. It's not everybody's, phobia or anxiety or whatever, or experience. But if it's yours, and You can get to the place in your imagination where you can see yourself as safe. Your world becomes safe. And it may mean you have to change something. That's the challenge part, right? Next one. This is a beast. It's only a thought, and the thought can be changed. That. The next one, which is almost as good. The point of power is always in the present moment. How much time did I spend yesterday thinking about last week? Oh, or next week. And then the last one. Every thought we think creates our future. So that right there, I mean, it's a simple nothing thing, right? And yet, that is our point of power, because our word, our imagination, our creation in our mind is what shows up in our world. And we have to act like it. We have to believe it. We have to take the risk to allow it. And then we have to act like it. And we're always doing this, whether we're speaking for our good or we're speaking for our detriment. We're always thinking, imagining stuff that can go wrong or stuff that can go right. And that's the first sort of inroad into creating this world of our choosing. And you never graduate, right? You're never done. You never succeed. You never don't have to worry about it. It's a perpetual thing. Sometimes it gets a little easier because you don't hear as much garbage thinking in your head. And sometimes you get extra just because. And so we have to use our imagination with our intention and call into our experience what we say we believe. And when we do that enough, we actually do begin to believe it. So I got to attend Reverend Lynn Hakester's ordination yesterday by Zoom. It happened in Oklahoma City. I was there. I was in the Zoom room. I was there. But way back when, before she was even a practitioner, which is now, 8 or 10 years ago, she was up at Asilomar, which is a retreat center in Central California. It's a lovely place. And way back when CSL met there often, and they did this every summer, and the people who were graduating practitioners or ministers or getting licensed as ministers or ordaining as ministers, they had this beautiful meadow with grass and flowers. It's really pretty. And the graduate and the ministerial people made an arch. And they decorated it, so it's a beautiful thing. And the deal was they had this beautiful arch, and when you were successful in your thing, whatever your thing happened to be, you got to walk through the arch. And that was a rite of passage. So it was a physical representation, a reminder of this thing that you had just done. And so before Reverend Lynn was even a practitioner, she was there at Silmar, and she was standing in the meadow looking at the arch going, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the arch thing. And she took a picture. And she had a picture of this arch on her computer all through practitioner training, all through ministerial school, all through after ministerial school, after she was licensed and before she became ordained. And that was her reminder that she used to say, I choose this. And when she walked through the arch, she wasn't in Asilomar. She was in Denver. But it didn't matter, because she had carried that imagination, carried herself with her imagination through that portal. In fact, I'm not sure she actually walked through the portal at Asilomar ever. But it doesn't matter, because she walked through it when she got her practitioner's license. She walked through it when she was a licensed minister. And she walked through it yesterday when she got ordained. So we use whatever tool we need to assist us in remembering what's important to us and what allows us to move ourselves in the direction that we choose to go. And the universe has to give it to us. Once we set it up and we get out of the way, the universe doesn't have a choice. Is that fun? Like, if I can get clear enough, the universe must deliver the goods. Must. It's frightening, because that means the responsibility is entirely personal, right? So, in the Saturday Evening Post, way back in 1929, Albert Einstein did an interview. And I found the original source of this stuff yesterday. But Einstein said, in response to some question, "I believe in intuitions and inspiration. I sometimes feel that I'm right. I don't know that I am. When 2 expeditions of scientists, financed by the Royal Academy, went out to test my theory of relativity, I was fairly convinced that their conclusions would agree with my hypothesis." I wasn't surprised when, during the eclipse on May 29th, 1919, they confirmed my intuitions. I would have been surprised if I was wrong. And then the interviewer said, "So then you trust your imagination more than your knowledge?" And Einstein said, "I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination." And this is the part you've heard before. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. We have the tools in our grasp. We got to own them. So what surprised me this week? I listen to books on tape all the time. In fact, I had a CD player put in my car so I could listen to CDs in my car, because the radio doesn't work for me. So anyway, I've been listening to a book on tape or on CD by Dr. Norman Doidge called The Brain That Changes Itself. Dr. Norman is an MD who has worked as a brain researcher, a psychiatrist, and a psychologist. His specialty is the easy for me to say, neuroplasticity of the brain, which is a very fancy word to talk about how the brain can change. And we're not just talking about wiring. We're talking about connections. We're talking about the way the brain actually works. The way the brain, which we used to think was fixed. We used to think what we came in with when we were babies was all we got. Now we know a whole lot more about brain science. And we know that the brain can rewire itself if something goes sideways. And when our brain rewires itself, our experience can change. So this is almost like a scientific explanation for how our imagination creates our reality. The cool thing yesterday, or this week, was we have this story in collective unconscious that because we get old, our brains quit working so well. And we can't remember stuff. And, blah, 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 blah. Basically, we believe that our brains don't work so well. And so we are stuck being old and having old brains. Well, guess what? We made that up. It doesn't have to be true. We can change that. And this is an interesting and a scary thought, right? Because that means if I'm settling for not remembering stuff or not being able to put ideas together, if I'm settling for a belief that I am less capable or less competent because I am old, I don't have to settle for that. And what's very cool is he has defensible scientific proof that anyone of any age having any physical expression can improve the quality and experience of their lives. If, big word, right? If they take reasonable actions and change their minds about how they think. Now, this doesn't mean that I can become an Olympic track star next week, nor can I become a world chess champion or win Dancing with the Stars. Those are not happening for me because A, they're not important to me, and they're not really in my sphere of interest. But I can improve my quality of life. And what's true for me, just like what Maria said, what's true for me is true for everybody. Every single one of us has the capability of changing our experience. And even somebody who has, physical constraints can improve their lives by changing the way they think about their life and how they perceive and engage with life. And we've got to stay at it. And our first challenge is to look at our disbelief that it's possible. And the second is to actually do something about it. So I'm going to talk more about Dr. Norman's stuff next week because I realized, A, I had too much to talk about this Sunday, and B, I didn't understand it well enough to speak it yet. So I'll talk more about his stuff next week. And I'm going to tell a story from my younger days before I close, and that'll be it for today. And this is a weird story to me, but it makes sense to me now. When I was a teenager, I was afraid to drive a car, like really totally paralyzed at the thought of driving the car. And I realize that's unusual. Most teenagers are excited to get freedom and wheels and stuff. And I suspect mine was, if I actually had freedom, I might do something. Yeah, well, I would have. And back then, you had to take driver's ed in high school to get your driver's license, or at least it was strongly recommended. And so I was in driver's ed, and I saved it for the last because I didn't really want to do it because I was scared of it. And so here I am as a graduating senior in driver's ed, and the teacher was a coach, of course, because that's, a coach class. And finally, it was my turn to sit behind the wheel of this car. And me and the coach with the chicken break, and then two poor, unfortunate students sitting in the back seat. And I am terrified. And so I pull out of the parking space, and I pull onto the service road, and I'm driving like 12 miles an hour. And he says, "You can go faster." And I freak. And I drive us into a ditch. And the coach says, "Okay." And the coach backed the car out of the ditch and said, I think it's somebody else's turn to drive. And I'm thinking, oh man, I am so screwed. And then we got back to the school after other people drove just fine, thank you. And I'm feeling like garbage. And everybody got out of the car but me, and the coach says, hang on a minute, I want to talk to you. And he says, I want to tell you about a technique I just learned. It's called visualization. So I want you to practice. This is back in the 70s, right? And if visualization was a new thing then, the Russians had developed it for their Olympic team. Well, not really, but that's the story we tell. And he said, I want you to practice imagining driving successfully. And I want you to do this at least 20 times a day. It was a Friday. Tomorrow and Sunday. And then Monday, you're going to do it. You're going to get in the car again. And you're going to drive just fine. And I thought, oh, man. Okay, I'll do it. Because I knew I had to figure this out. But it wasn't in my reality. It wasn't there. It's like, okay, I can visualize. I can get in the car. I can put the key in the ignition. I can put the seatbelt on. I can turn the car on. I can. And I did it probably 50 times a day. Monday came. I got in the car. And I wasn't terrified. I was still a little uneasy, but I wasn't terrified. This practice of visualization is a tool that we have, and it's a mechanism we have that helps us enact our imaginings. And it helps move us from that can't to can place. And the truth of the matter is, you use all the tools you got, right? Every single one. So I want to close with 2 quotes. One is a little snippet from yesterday morning's daily practice from Dr. Daniel Lee Morgan. The book is called Guidance for a Spiritual Journey. The quote is, every thought I entertain in my consciousness materializes in my outer life. It is God's law. Hence, I guard my mind, for out of it comes my life. I have a receptive mind, ready to receive the kingdom into my consciousness. Thus, my life expression is jubilant, vital, healthy, and rich. And then from Dr. Holmes, from a little book called Freedom from Stress. Our conviction of love must be greater than our belief in hate. Our conviction of life must be greater than our belief in death. Our consciousness of abundance greater than the fear, and the experience from which the fear has arisen, lack, want, and limitation. So each finds, and this is the beginning of emancipation of the individual, not only that the kingdom of God is at hand, but that the kingdom of God is present in them now. So each one of us has the opportunity to live in that space of the kingdom of God is present in me now. And I can dream. I can take the risk of stepping into a reality I choose. And I can create that all the time. As much as we dare, right? Do that best you can. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So I want to go ahead and close with an affirmative prayer. So if I said anything that was useful to you, hold it in your mind. If I reminded you of something, some way you can empower yourself to live more fully, hold that in your mind while I speak the words. I celebrate this thing called life. I celebrate this opportunity to be present and aware and participate in this great gift of life that's already been given to me and to all. And I remember that life is for me. I remember that life is motivated by love, empowered by love, and that each one has the opportunity at all times to live the life of their dreams. So I stand in this space of remembering this truth. And I know that the gift already has been given to me and to everyone. Each one already has received the gift or has been given the gift. Each one has the opportunity to receive it and to enact it. And so I receive and enact. And I see in my imagination each one stepping into this larger life of their choosing. Each one having a more joyful, healthy, prosperous, delightful experience. And I see each one radiating that liveliness out into the world and sharing that gift of great goodness with everyone they come in contact. Celebrating this opportunity to be and do and see and know and claim and allow and receive. I accept. I feel so grateful to know this, for me and for all. And I live it. And so it is.